and the total came to within a few bucks of my own count. Might have had a handful of Canadian coins in there, or some likely miscount due to worn coins. I remember it ended up being over $1,000 in pocket change, but I can't recall the actual total. But that was the last time I saved coins. Nowadays, I hear most banks won't do this at all, and will just refer you to those coin counting machines you see at hardware stores or Walmart that rob you of a large percentage of the total. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Infinite Automation. It says, I love how blatant you were, not even exiting the bank before rejoining the queue. Bravo. Another commenter down below called Snarky Bitch said, this pisses me off too. My bank doesn't have a machine anymore, and the one at Walmart used to take a smaller fee if you took payment via gift card, but not anymore. What the actual F am I supposed to do with all of this change? I don't usually use cash, and now I try to use it for tips, only for this very reason. When I do, unfortunately, accumulate some, I'll let my kids use it to buy a drink or a snack at the convenience store when we're on a road trip. It sucks for us, the cashier, and anyone else in line, but the crap has to get used somehow. OP responded to this one and said, I have a small mug on my dresser that I have some loose change that I happened upon. When wee ones come over, I usually just give them a small handful of coins each. For some reason, little humans still get a kick out of coins. It brings them joy, and it brings me joy seeing their faces light up. Well worth it. You know, I sat back and thought about this one for a second, and I realized that I've only used cash or change maybe a couple times a year in the past few years. I used to collect change pretty regularly and put it into this bear-shaped old peanut butter jar, and it would fill up pretty quickly, but I'm looking at that jar right now, and it's barely got an inch worth of coins up from the bottom, and that's probably from the past 3 years. So things have definitely changed. Plastic seems to be the way to go. The problem with plastic, though, is that you don't realize how much you're spending because it's not physical. I feel like if we only had to deal with cash, we would spend a lot less money because you can physically see your money going away. This story comes to us from Grumps1954. Time is a concept. Just after the invention of the printing press, I worked for a small but highly respected academic publisher here in the UK. I was part of the sales team, crisscrossing the country, visiting universities and bookshops, promoting our titles. It was a good life before even car phones, never mind mobiles. Once we were out on the road, we were pretty much our own bosses. Our sales manager had done the same job, knew how things worked, and was perfectly happy to allow us to make our own arrangements and decisions, as long as our territories were profitable year on year. And they were. Then the stars realigned and we were taken over by a much larger publisher. So now, instead of knowing pretty much everyone in the company, it was just a voice at the other end of the phone when we needed to get something sorted. As is often the way with such large organizations, it ran on tram tracks. For example, as reps, we had company cars, for which previously there had been a set budget, and we could have whatever we wanted as long as it fell within the financial restraints. Now, there was a choice of 3, and that was that. Came the time when they decided that company-wide people were not using their time efficiently, especially with regard to meetings. Thus, highly expensive consultants were drafted in, and one of their recommendations was that every single employee should go on a time management course. It was just the merest coincidence that this consultancy also provided the course. Eventually, our sales team got the word, and we had to jump through these particular hoops. In vain, we pointed out that we were not office-based, so we rarely had meetings, and if we did, they were organized and run by somebody else. We could hardly tell a customer or university academic that they were taking too long, and could we please go a bit faster? And finally, time management for us was avoiding traffic jams and roadworks so as to get to our next appointment on time. Until matter transfer was developed, no course in the world was going to improve that situation. As you can probably guess, all this fell on deaf ears. There could be no exceptions. The trams were heading down those tracks with no possibility of stopping. Somehow, this course lasted 3 days. I have no idea how, as most of it consisted of stating the blindingly obvious. In addition, there were traveling days at each end, as all 3 days were 9 to 5. so the four of us had most of a week in a 4-star hotel with virtually unlimited food and drink, gaining nothing but weight from the whole experience. I can only guess what we cost the company. Even at those long ago prices, it had to be a long way into 4 figures. Plus the time off the road, as for a week the sales team had not sold a single book to a single bookshop. We were supposed to write follow-ups detailing just what we had gotten out of the course, but after discussion with our sales manager, this requirement was quietly dropped. Probably just as well. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Alligator Fancy. It says, "It's a shame you didn't get to write up what you got out of the course. Would have been fun to have a bunch of people turn in papers titled some variant of what I learned from this course and an otherwise blank page." Another commenter down below called Hayride440 said, "A consultant is someone who charges you $500 an hour to borrow your watch so they can tell you what time it is." I really like the first commenter's idea of still filling out what they got from the course, because they could have the first page saying all of the wonderful things that they were taught and that they understood it all. But right down at the bottom of that first page, they could have a little sentence that says, "On the next page, I'm going to cover how much of this I'm going to use in my current position." And then have the next page be completely blank. That would be perfect. This story comes to us from Enterprise SRL. "The boss didn't trust his team, so I built a system to track every move we made." A few years ago, I worked at a mid-sized company where the atmosphere was, let's say, not ideal. The manager had this ever-growing suspicion that people were just waiting for the right time to leave. He believed that morale was low, and that the team was barely holding it together. And while I'm not sure where he got this idea, he started imposing more and more controls on us to monitor productivity. One day, he introduced a new rule. Every task, every email, every conversation must be logged, no exceptions. The justification? I need to know exactly what you're doing, and I need to be sure nothing's falling through the cracks. Now, here's the problem. My team was already working at full capacity, dealing with multiple tasks every single day. But suddenly, we were being told to log everything. If you were sending a simple email, you had to log it. Writing a report, log it. Setting up a meeting, log it. Every little action had to be documented. I tried explaining how ridiculous this was, but the response was always the same. I need to make sure you're on task. He didn't trust us to do our jobs, so he created a system where every move had to be tracked and validated by someone else. I didn't see any way out of it, so I decided to comply. But I wasn't going to make it easy. I started logging everything, and I mean everything, down to the smallest tasks. Simple emails, logged. A quick 10-minute meeting to touch base, logged. I even started logging the amount of time I spent thinking about the best way to word my emails, because, hey, it was part of the task, right? To top it off, I made sure my logs were detailed as hell. I meticulously logged every action, no matter how insignificant. The result? It was chaos. The logs were piling up, but all they did was waste more of my time. The manager was reviewing everything and asking questions about tasks that had no bearing on the big picture. Meanwhile, I could barely get through a day without constantly being interrupted by the need to document my every move. And then it happened. The manager finally asked, "Why is everything taking so long?" I gave him a simple reply. "You asked for everything to be logged." He didn't like hearing that, but the best part was when he finally realized that the whole system was making us less productive. His solution? We were told to just log what's necessary. The policy was quietly dropped, and things slowly started to return to normal. But by then, I had already built something of my own. After all the frustration of logging every single action, I realized there had to be a better way. So I started building a tool that could automatically track everything, without the annoying back and forth or wasted time. I wasn't looking to change the whole company, I just wanted a way to do my job without all the micromanagement. What started as a workaround eventually grew into a full-fledged solution, and I realized that this frustration had pushed me to create something far more effective than the system we were using. Funny how a lack of trust can sometimes spark the most innovative ideas.